Nug and Yeb, Yog-Sothoth, Shub-NIggurath, Azathoth, Nyarlathotep, Cthulhu. These are but a handful of the unimaginable, otherworldly gods that H.P. Lovecraft wrote about in his nightmare-fueled universe that is the Yog-Sothothery, more commonly known as the Cthulhu Mythos. Stories that make you fear the depths of the ocean for what could be slumbering below. Stories that make you gaze amongst the stars and think that something is out there that could wipe us out in an instant. Stories based on the belief that our place in the universe is so incredibly minuscule we could not possibly comprehend what truly is out there. H.P. Lovecraft gave us the stories and let us run with them, for he knew that only the reader knows what they're truly afraid of. So light a candle, grab your drink, and pray something isn't watching from the shadows. The Eldritch Gods await in this petrifying episode of Tipplers 2 cents. Jesus, Sean, could you quiet down? I'm trying to do the intro. Wait. No. Please. No. No! Hello once again, drinkers and thinkers, and welcome to episode 16, as well as our Halloween special. So thank you for joining us for that. I am your host, Chris Walters, and with me is my co-host and co-creator, the Guinness World Record holder and the most rap songs made without teeth, Sean Knox.
Yeah, let's get our tentacle fuck on, boys.
Time for some fucking hentai. Anyway, no real updates to give on anything, so I'm just going to dive into what we're drinking today. I am drinking delicious air because I cannot fucking stand to drink any more alcohol. I went for drinks right after work, probably about 4 o'clock last night, and then 4 o'clock p.m., and then didn't stop drinking until about 4 a.m., so I am quite done with alcohol for a little bit. But what about you, Sean? What are you drinking?
I am sipping on some Hennessy today because I've never had cognac. And oh my god,
right.
That smells delicious. So
I'm drinking like a real rapper right now.
That's probably too much. Shit.
Yeah, and I also don't really know who to toast to. So, I mean, is there anybody in particular that you'd like to give a toast or shout out to?
I mean, I got a raise at work finally. Another one. Because of the, I'm guessing because of the robbery. Because essentially my big boss that I never talked to, he was like, "Oh, I don't want to buy you with money or anything like that. I want to make sure you get counseling." I'm like, "No, you can buy me with money. That's fine." So I got like $1 raise, and then I got another $1.30 raise. So that's pretty much the only one that I'm looking forward to. Other than the fact that Halloween's right around the corner, and I hope we have a good party. I hope we have fun with that. I hope everyone else has a very safe Halloween, because I know fucking 2020 Halloween is either going to be the greatest or the worst fucking night on the planet.
Yeah.
Just because with everybody walking around or not walking around, I don't even fucking know how people are going to react. But either way, that's what I toast to. I toast to everyone having a safe Halloween. And, yeah, cheers.
Yeah, happy Halloween, guys.
Oh.
That was me sipping on some water, so. But all right, guys. The first of our topics is going to be on the mastermind himself, H.P. Lovecraft. To kick us off, Sean is actually going to be doing this one.
So, Lovecraft was born in his family home on August 20th, 1890 in Providence, Rhode Island. He was the only child of Winfield Scott Lovecraft and Sarah Susan Lovecraft, with the maiden name of Phillips. Susan's family was of substantial means at the time of her marriage. Her father, Whipple Van Buren Phillips, being involved in business ventures, which is kind of vague, but that's pretty much all it said. In April 1893, after a psychotic episode in a Chicago hotel, Winfield, H.P.'s father, was committed to Butler Hospital in Providence. Though it is not clear who reported Winfield's prior behavior to the hospital, medical records indicate that he had been, quote, doing and saying strange things at times, for a year before his commitment. So Winfield spent 5 years in Butler Hospital before dying in 1898 when H.P. was 8 years old. His death certificate listed the cause of death as general paresis, a term synonymous with late-stage syphilis. So throughout his life, Lovecraft maintained that his father fell into a paralytic state due to insomnia and being overworked, and remained that way until his death. God damn it, I can't fucking talk.
His death.
It's not known whether Lovecraft was simply kept ignorant of his father's illness or whether his later remarks were intentionally misleading. After his father's hospitalization, Lovecraft resided in the family home with his mother, his maternal aunts Lillian and Annie, and his maternal grandparents Whipple and Ruby. According to the accounts of family friends, Susie, which is H.P.'s mother, doted on the young Lovecraft to a fault, pampering him and never letting him out of her sight. Lovecraft later recollected that after his father's illness, his mother was, quote, permanently stricken with grief. Whipple became a father figure to Lovecraft in this time, which is his grandfather, which is a fucking dope-ass name, Whipple.
I was going to say, like, can we take a second to recognize the name Whipple? Because can you imagine getting a whipping from a guy named Whipple? He's like, come here, boy. You're going to get a Whipple from old Whipple.
Well, Lovecraft loved that name too because Whipple was his favorite. Lovecraft noting that his grandfather became the, quote, center of my entire universe, which is a fucking big statement. But then again, you'll see he has a pattern of really over-exaggerating. Whipple, who traveled often on business, maintained correspondence by letter with the young Lovecraft, who, by the age of 3, was already proficient at reading and writing. My daughter is not proficient in reading and writing. He encouraged the young Lovecraft to have an appreciation of literature, especially classical literature and English poetry. In his old age, he helped raise the young H.P. and educated him not only on the classics, but also in original weird tales of winged horrors and deep, low moaning sounds, which he created for his grandchild's entertainment. The exact sources of Whipple's weird tales have not been identified. Lovecraft himself guessed that they originated from classic Gothic novelists like Anne Radcliffe, Matthew Lewis, and Charles Maturin. It was in this period that Lovecraft was introduced to some of his earliest literary influences, such as The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, illustrated by Gustave Doré, 1001 Nights, A Gift from His Mother, and Thomas Bulfinch's Age of Fable and Ovid's Metamorphoses. And 1001 Nights was a gift from his mother. So while there is no indication that Lovecraft was particularly close to his grandfather Robbie, her death in 1896 had a profound effect. By his own account, it sent his family into, quote, a gloom which he never fully recovered. See what I mean? Like, almost every time, granted, it's the death of a family member and stuff, but, I have certain family members where I'm like, yeah, it sucks, but life moves on. You know what I mean? Whereas, if my mom died, I'd be like, fuck, you know what I mean?
Well, and he's a author, a future author, so, of course, he uses big words to, fluff it up.
Yeah. His mother and aunts wearing of black mourning dresses terrified him, and it was at this time that Lovecraft, approximately 5.5 years old at the time, started having nightmares that would inform his later writing. Specifically, he began to have recurring nightmares of which he termed night gaunts. Their appearance he credited to the influence of Doré's illustrations, which would, quote, whirl me through space at a sickening rate at speed. All the while fretting and impelling me with their detestable tridents. So, even with, him having night terrors, most people nowadays constantly will just be like, yeah, it scares the fuck out of me, but he really is just very detailed about it. So, 30 years later, the, quote, night gaunts would actually appear in Lovecraft's writing. Lovecraft's earliest known literary works began at the age of 7 with poems restyling the Odyssey and other mythological stories. Lovecraft has said that as a child he was enamored by the Roman pantheon of gods, which I am too, and so is Chris, accepting them as genuine expressions of divinity and foregoing his Christian upbringing. He recalled at 5 years old being told Santa Claus did not exist and retorting by asking, quote, "God is not equal. Why is God not equally a myth?" So that's a pretty fucking bold statement for 5 years old to say, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At the age of 8,
crazy.
He took at the age of 8 he took a keen interest in the sciences, particularly astronomy and chemistry. He also examined the anatomy books available to him in the family library, learning the specifics of human reproduction that had yet to be explained to him, and found that it, quote, virtually killed my interest in the subject. So too bad he didn't find any playboys. Like, seriously, who learns about sex and is like, you know what? Nah, not for me. Like, really think about it. That's legitimately, he found a book on, like sexual reproduction. He's just like, well, that's okay.
I don't care for that very much. Anyway, picking up off of that, in 1902, according to Lovecraft's own correspondence, astronomy became a guiding influence on his worldview. He began producing the periodical Rhode Island Journal of Astronomy, of which 69 issues survive, using the hectograph printing method. Lovecraft went in and out of elementary school repeatedly, oftentimes with home tutors making up for those lost school years, missing time due to health concerns that are not entirely clear. The written recollections of his peers described him as both withdrawn, yet openly welcoming to anybody who shared his current fascination with astronomy, inviting anyone to look through the telescope that he had prized. By 1900, Whipple's various business concerns were suffering a downturn and slowly reducing his family's wealth. He was forced to let his family's hired servants go, leaving Lovecraft, Whipple, and Susie alone in the family home. In the spring of 1904, Whipple's largest business venture suffered a catastrophic failure. Within months, he died due to a stroke at age 70. After Whipple's death, Susie was unable to support the upkeep of the expensive family home on what remained of the Phillips estate. Later that year, she was forced to move herself and her son to a small duplex. Lovecraft has called this time one of the darkest of his life, remarking in a 1934 letter that he saw no point in living anymore. So, again, kind of over-exaggerating.
Yeah.
But still, he did idolize Whipple, and, having to move after a death and all that stuff, that is pretty tragic, so I'll give him that.
Yeah, I'll give him that one, but he has a recurring theme by saying statements that are basically suicidal almost.
Yeah.
But you'll see. Everyone will hear.
In fall of the same year, he started high school. Much like in his earlier school years, Lovecraft was at times removed from school for long periods, for which he termed near breakdowns. He did say, though, that while having some conflicts with teachers, he enjoyed high school, becoming close with a small circle of friends and performed well academically, excelling in particular at chemistry and physics. Not being interested in sex is one thing, but enjoying high school? This dude's got some weird mental issues. Aside from a pause in 1904, he also resumed publishing with Rhode Island Journal of Astronomy, as well as starting the Scientific Gazette, which dealt mostly with chemistry. It was during this period that Lovecraft produced the first of the types of fiction he would later be known for, namely The Beast in the Cave and another one, The Alchemist. It was in 1908 that prior to his high school graduation, when Lovecraft suffered another health crisis of some sort, though this instance was seemingly more severe than any prior. The exact circumstances and causes remain unknown. The only direct records are Lovecraft's own later correspondence, wherein he described it variously as a nervous collapse and a sort of breakdown. So really just, some sort of mental breakdown of some sort. It doesn't really specify. In one letter, blaming it on the stress of high school despite his enjoying it. So that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm enjoying it, but it's fucking stressful. I'm like, well, I get it. In another letter concerning the events of 1908, he notes, I was and am prey to intense headaches, insomnia, and general nervous weakness, which prevents my continuous application to anything. Though Lovecraft maintained that he was to attend Brown University after high school, he never graduated and never attended school again. Fucking quitter. Whether Lovecraft suffered from a physical ailment, a mental one, or some combination thereof has never been determined. An account from a high school classmate described Lovecraft as exhibiting terrible tics, and that at times he'd be sitting in his seat and he'd suddenly up and jump, which, almost sounds a little bit like whatchamacallit? The fucking disease with ticks and stuff. You shout out obscenities and shit like that.
Oh, fuck. Why can't I remember it now?
Yeah, Tourette's syndrome. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's right. Why couldn't I fucking think of that? Jesus Christ.
I don't know. But I knew a kid in high school that had Tourette's, and a lot of people always think that it's you just randomly shout out curse words, but for the most part, that's not what Tourette's is. It's just nervous little tics that you'll do. Like the kid that I knew, he would just be kind of looking straight, and all of a sudden his head would just flinch and twerk around everywhere. So
yeah, I've had that. I knew it wasn't. I think it was in middle school. It was actually a foreign exchange student, and she would just randomly in class just go, ooh, ooh, and I'm like, what the hell? Yeah, then I think I asked the teacher, I'm like, do you know what's wrong with her? And she's all like, oh, she has Tourette's. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because, as a kid, not even as a kid, but just in general, when you learn about Tourette's, you learn about it in the comedic way where it's just like, oh, fuck, shit, fucking ass,
Yeah. That's what I was saying. Everybody thinks it's that, but generally it's not you just shouting obscenities.
Yeah.
Anyway, Harry Probst, a psychology professor, examined the account and claimed that chorea minor was the most likely cause of Lovecraft's childhood symptoms, while noting that instances of chorea minor after adolescence are very rare. Lovecraft himself acknowledged in letters that he had suffered from bouts of chorea as a child. I read that all fucked up. By the way, chorea is an abnormal involuntary movement, so much like we were talking about. It is characterized by brief, abrupt, irregular, unpredictable, non-stereotyped movements. So in other words, he was jumpy as fuck. In milder cases, chorea may appear purposeful. The patient often appears fidgety and clumsy. Anyway, Probst further ventured that Lovecraft's 1908 breakdown was attributed to a hysteroid seizure, a term that today usually denotes atypical depression. In another letter concerning the events of 1908, Lovecraft stated that he could hardly bear to see or speak to anyone, and liked to shut out the world by putting down dark shades and using artificial light. So yeah, it really just does sound like depression right there.
Yeah.
Few of Lovecraft and Susie's activities from late 1908 and 1913 are recorded. Lovecraft mentions a steady continuation of their financial decline, highlighted by a failed business venture of his uncle that cost Susie a large portion of their already dwindling wealth, not health. A friend of Susie, Clara Hess, recalled a visit during which Susie spoke continuously about Lovecraft being so hideous that he hid from everyone, and he did not like to walk upon the streets where people could gaze on him. Despite Hess' protest that this was not the case, Susie maintained this stance. For his part, Lovecraft said he found his mother to be a positive marvel of consideration. A next-door neighbor later pointed out that what others in the neighborhood often supposed were loud, nocturnal quarrels between the mother and son, she recognized as being recitations of Shakespeare, an activity that seemed to delight the mother and son, which is kind of weird. I mean, I get it. I guess for the time it's probably not as weird, but just randomly in the middle of the night, you're just fucking quoting and reenacting Shakespeare loud as fuck.
Well, yeah, imagine that, you think it's a fucking domestic dispute, and then you walk in and you just hear, to be or not to be. You're like, okay.
Yeah,
fucking Lovecraft's at it again.
That's weird. During this period, Lovecraft revived his earlier scientific periodicals. He endeavored to commit himself to the study of organic chemistry, Susie, being the doting mother she is, buying the expensive glass chemistry assemblage he wanted. Lovecraft found his duties were hobbled by the mathematics involved, for which he found boring and would cause headaches that would incapacitate him for the day. I feel you, bro. Anytime I do math, my head explodes. So
I get it, bro. Fuck that. So, Lovecraft's first poem that was not self-published appeared in a local newspaper in 1912 called Providence in 2000 AD. The poem envisioned a future where people of English heritage were displaced by immigrants, that was being Irish, Italians, Portuguese, and Jews. In the period, he also wrote racist poetry, such as The New England Fallen and On the Creation of Negroes. And by the way, the name wasn't Negroes; it was in fact the N-word with the hard R. So he was pretty racist. There was no indication that either were published in his lifetime. It's just so upsetting that such a brilliant mind can just be corrupted by something like that. You know what I mean? I mean, at the time, I guess I understand, but it's upsetting, and yeah. But anyway, in 1911, Lovecraft's letters to editors began appearing to pulp and weird fiction magazines, most notably a magazine called Argosy. In 1913, letter critical of Fred Jackson, a prominent writer for Argosy, started Lovecraft down a path that would greatly affect his life. Lovecraft described Jackson's stories as trivial, effeminate, and in places coarse. So Lovecraft is just straight talking shit about Fred Jackson's writing. So, continuing, Lovecraft said that Jackson's characters exhibit the, quote, delicate passions and emotions proper to Negroes and anthropoid apes. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, that's some fucking hugely racist shit to say.
That's hugely racist shit. And you got to keep in mind, at the time, since it was appropriate to be racist at the time, that was some fucking heat he just threw at Fred Jackson's way. So, this sparked a nearly year-long feud in the letter section of Argosy between Lovecraft, along with his occasional supporters, and the majority of readers critical of his view of Jackson. Jesus Christ. Lovecraft's biggest critic was a man named John Russell, who often replied in verse, and to whom Lovecraft felt compelled to reply because he actually respected Russell's writing skills. The most immediate effect of the feud was recognition garnered from Edward F. Doss, the then head editor of the United Amateur Press Association, also known as the UAPA. Doss invited Russell and Lovecraft to the organization, and both ended up accepting Lovecraft in April of 1914. Lovecraft immersed himself in the world of amateur journalism for most of the following decade. During this period, he was an advocate for amateurism versus commercialism. Lovecraft's definition of commercialism, though, was specific to writing for what he considered lowbrow publications for pay. He contrasted this with his view of professional publication, which he termed as writing for journals and publishers he considered respectable. He thought of amateur journalism as training and practice for a professional career. Lovecraft appointed chairman of the Department of Public Criticism of the UAPA in 1914, so he got promoted. He used this position to advocate for his what many consider peculiar insistence on the superiority of the English language usage that most writers considered archaic. Emblematic of the Anglophile opinions he maintained throughout his life, he openly criticized other UAPA contributors for their Americanisms and slang. Often these criticisms were couched in xenophobic and racist arguments, bemoaning the bastardization of the national language by immigrants. So, essentially, everything everyone else wrote normally, he wrote in a very over-the-top English sort of way. Something like, "At which hour I hath walked into my own family library, I hath found pictures of titties and vaginas, and I was disgusted at the sight and swore of amorous right forever." Like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to let go of the fact that he saw porn, essentially, and was just like,
I know, it's strange. But he's also doing fucking Shakespeare in the middle of the night with his mom, so...
So who cares about his fucking opinion?
So he's weird.
Yeah. In mid-1915, Lovecraft was elected to the position of vice president of the UAPA. So, once again, got promoted. 2 years later, he was elected president. 2 years later, he was elected president and appointed other board members that mostly shared his view of the supremacy of classical language over modern American English. Another significant event at the time was the beginning of World War I. Lovecraft published multiple criticism of the U.S. government and the American public's reluctance to join the war to protect England, for which he viewed as America's homeland. Which, say what you will about Lovecraft, but that's actually a pretty good fucking point. Just being that aware of not just a war, but the fact that he wasn't just a writer. He obviously cared about his own country in a way, and he also cared about other countries in a way. Which, but that's what a lot of Americans don't do. They don't generally give a shit about other countries or the rest of the world in general.
Right.
So props to him in that regard. In 1916, Lovecraft published his early short story, The Alchemist, in the main UAPA journal, a departure from his usual verse, due in no small part to the encouragement of W. Paul Cook, another UAPA member and future lifelong friend. Lovecraft began writing and publishing more fiction. Soon to follow were The Tomb and Dagon. The Tomb, by Lovecraft's own admission, follows closely to the style and construction of the writings of one of his largest influences, Edgar Allan Poe. So, he looked up to Edgar Allan Poe, which is fucking great, I guess.
It sounds about right, too, just how emotional and depressed he sounds.
Depressing, yeah. Dagon, though, is considered Lovecraft's first work that embraced the concept and themes that his writing would later be known for. In 1819, Lovecraft's term as president of the UAPA finally elapsed, and he took his former post as the chairman of the Department of Public Criticism. In 1919, Lovecraft published another short story named Beyond the Wall of Sleep. Excuse me again. Fuck. In 1917, as Lovecraft related to Kleiner, Lovecraft made an aborted attempt to enlist in the army. Though he passed the physical exam, he told Kleiner that his mother, quote, has threatened to go to any lengths, legal or otherwise, if I do not reveal all the ills which unfit me for the army. So either he pussied out, or Mommy Susie, being the overbearing type, indeed did eventually bail him out.
Sounds about right. In the winter of 1918 to 1919, Susie, exhibiting symptoms of a nervous breakdown herself of some sort, went to live with her elder sister, Lillian. It is unclear what Susie may have been suffering from, probably depression. It sounds like it kind of runs in their family. Neighbor and friend Clara Hess, interviewed in 1948, recalled instances of Susie describing weird and fantastic creatures that rushed out from behind buildings and from corners at dark. In the same account, Hess describes a time when they crossed paths in downtown Providence, and Susie was, quote, excited and apparently did not know where she was. So, yeah, really just sounding like this stuff runs in their family. Whatever the causes, in March 1919, they resulted in Susie being committed to Butler Hospital, like her husband, Whipple, before her. Lovecraft's immediate reaction to Susie's commitment was visceral, writing to Kleiner that existence seems of little value, and that he wished it might terminate. So basically saying he sees little value in life, he wants to kill himself.
Yeah.
Lovecraft periodically visited Susie and walked large grounds with her, but speaking to Susie's doctors, a month after she entered Butler Hospital, Lovecraft came to the realization that she was never going to be released. Surprisingly, late 1919 saw Lovecraft become more outgoing. After a period of isolation, he began joining friends in trips to writer gatherings, the first being a talk in Boston presented by Lord Dunsany, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, whom Lovecraft had recently discovered and idolized. In early 1920, at an amateur writing convention, he met Frank Belknap Long, who ended up being Lovecraft's most influential and closest confidant for the rest of his life. This period also proved to be the most prolific of Lovecraft's short story career. The influence of Dunsany's is readily apparent in 1919 output, later to be coined Lovecraft's Dream Cycle, with stories like The White Ship, The Doom That Came to Sarnath, and The Statement of the oh god, man, my fucking words just blah, blah, blah. The statement of Randolph Carter in early 1920 followed the Cats of Ulthar and Celephais. I don't know how to say that.
Celephais.
Celephais?
Yeah.
It was later in 1920 that Lovecraft began publishing the earliest stories that fit into the Cthulhu Mythos. The Cthulhu Mythos, there's so many fucking, there's so many th sounds in this fucking,
just
all
wait.
of his shit. The Cthulhu Mythos is a term likely coined by August Derleth. Encompasses Lovecraft stories that share a commonality in the revelation of cosmic insignificance, initially realistic settings, and reoccurring entities and texts. The poem Nyarlathotep, here it is again. Nyarlathotep, and the short story The Crawling Chaos, in collaboration with the Winifred Virginia Jackson, written in the late 1920s. Following in early 1921 came The Nameless City, the first story that falls definitively into the Cthulhu Mythos. In it is found one of Lovecraft's most enduring bits of writing, a couplet recited by his creation, Abdul Al-Hazard. Yeah, he writes a lot of shit that's hard to say.
Abdul Al-Hazard.
A couplet recited by his creation, Abdul
Al-Hazard.
That is not dead, which cannot eternal lie, or which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die. And yeah, that's pretty badass. Like, I love that saying. I've heard it before. That's where it comes from. On May 24th, 1921, Susie died in Butler Hospital due to complications from a gallbladder surgery 5 days earlier. Lovecraft's initial reaction, expressed in a letter 9 days after Susie's death, was that of an extreme nervous shock that crippled him physically and emotionally, again remarking that he found no reason that he should continue living. And I don't blame him. Your mom passing has probably got to be like one of the hardest things to deal with, so I understand.
Yeah.
Despite Lovecraft's reaction, he continued to attend amateur journalist conventions. It was at one such convention in July that Lovecraft met Sonia Green.
Lovecraft's aunts disapproved of this relationship with Sonia. Lovecraft and Green married on March 3rd, 1924, and relocated to her Brooklyn apartment at 793 Flatbush Avenue. She thought he needed to leave Providence to flourish, and he was willing to support him financially. So, one of those things that I want to mention too, it kind of seems like he has a thing, like, you know that saying, like, we're attracted to people that reflect our parents?
Yeah.
It's upsetting, but it's unfortunately true because Green, or, Sonia fucking takes care of this dude so much. So Green, who had been married before, later said that Lovecraft had performed satisfactorily as a lover, though she had to take the initiative in all aspects of the relationship, which fucking doesn't surprise me because the motherfucker's repelled at the idea of sex.
Yeah.
She attributed Lovecraft's passive nature to a stultifying upbringing by his mother, which is a pretty good point on her part. Anyway, H.P. was enthralled by New York, and in what was informally dubbed the Calum Club, he acquired a group of encouraging intellectual and literary friends who urged him to submit stories to Weird Tales, which is, I think, it was a magazine. Editor Edwin Baird accepted many otherworldly dream cycle Lovecraft stories for the ailing publication, though they were heavily criticized by a section of the readership. Established informally some years before Lovecraft arrived in New York, the core Calum Club members were the boys' adventure novelist Henry Everett McNeill, the lawyer and anarchist writer James Ferdinand Morton Jr., and the poet Reinhard Kleiner. On New Year's Day of 1925, Sonia moved to Cleveland for a job opportunity, and Lovecraft left Flatbush for a small first-floor apartment in 169 Clinton Street, quote, at the end of Red Hook, a location which came to discomfort him greatly. Later that year, the Calum Club's 4 regular attendees were joined by Lovecraft along with his protege, Frank Belcamp Long, bookseller George Willard Kirk, and Samuel Loveman. Loveman was Jewish, but he and Lovecraft became close friends in spite of the latter's nativist attitudes, which is, surprising. So it just seemed like he had an issue with people of color.
Yeah.
Not long after the marriage, Green lost her business and her assets disappeared in a bank failure. She also became ill. Dude, Lovecraft made efforts to support his wife through regular jobs, but lack of previous work experience meant he lacked proven marketable skills. After a few unsuccessful spells at low level, after a few unsuccessful spells at being a low-level clerk, his job seeking became desultory. The publisher of Weird Tales attempted to put the loss-making magazine on a business footing and offered the job of editor to Lovecraft, who declined, citing his reluctance to relocate to Chicago. Quote, "Think of the tragedy of such a move for an aged antiquarian," the 34-year-old Lovecraft declared. God damn, bro. This fucking Hennessy. Shit. Baird was replaced with Farnsworth Wright. God damn it, these fucking names. Every single name.
I know.
In
Like
this
every
fucking...
name has to have some fucking weird.
Farnsworth
spelling.
with Whipple. So Farnsworth Wright, whose writing Lovecraft had criticized, Lovecraft's submissions were often rejected by Wright. May have been partially due to censorship guidelines imposed in the aftermath of a Weird Tales story that hinted at necrophilia. Although after Lovecraft's death, Wright accepted many of the stories he had originally rejected. So basically, after Lovecraft had died, the magazine of Weird Tales he eventually accepted purely because of the fact that Lovecraft had died. Right. Green, which is Lovecraft's wife, moving to where the work was, relocated to Cincinnati and then to Cleveland. Her employment required constant travel, adding to the daunting reality of failure in a city with a large immigrant population. Lovecraft's single-room apartment at 169 Clinton Street and 169 Clinton Street in Brooklyn Heights, not far from the working-class waterfront neighborhood of Red Hook, was burgled, leaving him not only with only the clothes he was wearing. Son of a bitch, bro. This Hennessy. All right. In August 1925, he wrote The Horror at Red Hook, and he, in the latter of which the narrator says, quote, "My coming to New York had been a mistake, for whereas I had looked for poignant wonder and inspiration, I had found instead only a sense of horror and oppression which threatened to master, paralyze, and annihilate me," unquote. It was around this time that he wrote the outline for The Call of Cthulhu, fucking finally, and its theme of the insignificance of all humanity. With a weekly allowance Green sent, Lovecraft moved to a working-class area of Brooklyn Heights where he subsisted in a tiny apartment, and he had lost approximately 40 pounds of body weight by 1926 when he left for Providence.
And back in Providence, Lovecraft lived in a spacious brown Victorian wooden house at 10 Barnes Street until 1933. The same address is given as the home of Dr. Willett and Lovecraft's The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. The period beginning after his return to Providence, the last decade of his life, was Lovecraft's most prolific, in the time that he had produced short stories as well as the longest works of fiction. The Dream Quest of Unknown Kedath, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, and At the Mountain of Madness, or The Mountains of Madness. He frequently revised work for other authors and did a large amount of ghostwriting, including The Mound, Winged Death, and The Diary of Alonzo Typer. One of his clients, Harry fucking Houdini, that's funny, Harry Houdini, like that's kind of weird that he ties into this. But one of his clients, Harry Houdini, was, what the hell is that word? Ladottery? I don't know.
I don't even know where you are.
I don't even know what that means. And attempted to help Lovecraft by introducing him to the head of a newspaper syndicate. Plans for a further project were ended by Houdini's death, which of course, because he's dead. Although he was able to combine his distinctive style with the style being elusive and amorphous description by horrified through passive narrations with the kind of stock content and action that the editor of Weird Tales wanted. Wright paid handsomely to snap up the Dunwich Horror, which proved to be very popular with readers, and I actually think that's probably got to be one of Lovecraft's most famous stories, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's like the one we all hear about the most. Lovecraft increasingly produced work that brought him no remuneration, affecting a calm indifference to the reception of his works. Lovecraft was in reality extremely sensitive to criticism and easily precipitated into withdrawal. He was known to give up trying to sell a story after it had been rejected once, so kind of a quitter, and that's probably due to his mother babying him, as a youngin'. Yeah. Sometimes, as with The Shadow over Innsmouth, which included a rousing chase that supplied action, he wrote a story that might have been commercially viable but did not try to sell it. Lovecraft even ignored interested publishers. He failed to reply when one inquired about a novel Lovecraft might have ready. Although he had completed such work like the case of Charles Dexter Ward, it was never typed up. A few years later, after Lovecraft had moved to Providence, he and his wife Sonia Green, having lived separately for so long, agreed to amicably divorce. Green moved to California in 1933 and remarried in 1936, unaware that Lovecraft, despite his assurance to the contrary, had never officially signed the final decree.
Isn't that some shit? Like, of course he wouldn't fucking sign the final one. Like, he couldn't accept it.
I just want to say that that's a really stupid thing to do. If somebody doesn't want to be with you, let them go. Don't fucking... I can't stand when I hear about that, like people not signing the divorce papers. It's like, it's already over, man. Like, just get it over with.
Yeah, you're already moving on with your life. Like, you might as well just be like, all right, like, make it official. Yeah. It's not like they're going to come back.
Yeah, it's like, well, even if you don't sign that paper, she's still done with you, or he's still done with you. Just fucking get it over with.
Yeah. So anyway, Lovecraft was never able to provide for even basic expenses by selling stories and doing paid literary work for others. So he lived frugally, subsisting on an inheritance that was nearly depleted by the time he died. He sometimes went without food to be able to pay for the cost of mailing letters. After leaving New York, he moved to an apartment at 10 Barnes Street near Brown University with a surviving aunt. A few years later, they moved to a slightly less expensive place at 65 Prospect Street as a result of the Great Depression. As a result of the Great Depression, he shifted towards socialism, decrying both of his prior beliefs and the rising tide of fascism. He supported Franklin D. Roosevelt, and he thought that the New Deal was not sufficiently leftist. Fucking, why does that not surprise me? In late 1936, he witnessed the publication of his book, The Shadow over Innsmouth, as a paperback book. However, Lovecraft was displeased as his book was riddled with errors. It sold slowly, and approximately only 200 copies were bound. The remaining manuscripts were destroyed after the publisher went out of business. So that fucking sucks. By this point, Lovecraft's literary career had reached its end. Shortly after having written his last original short story, which was The Hunter of the Dark, he stated that the hostile reception of At the Mountains of Madness had done, quote, more than anything to end my effective fictional career. On June 11th, Robert E. Howard's H.P.'s good friend, and that sucks. Sorry. On June 11th, Robert E. Howard, which was H.P.'s good friend, committed suicide after being told that his mother would not awaken from her coma. So that fucking sucks. His mother died shortly thereafter. So this deeply affected Lovecraft. The fact that his friend died and then his friend's mother died afterward. So he consoled Howard's father. Almost immediately, Lovecraft wrote a brief memoir titled, quote, In Memoriam of Robert Irwin Howard. Meanwhile, Lovecraft's physical health was deteriorating. He was suffering from an affliction that he referred to as gripe. After seeing a doctor, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer of the small intestine. Due to his fear of doctors, Lovecraft was not examined until a mere month before his death. He remained hospitalized during that time. He lived in constant pain until his death on March 15th, 1937 in Providence. In accordance with his lifelong scientific curiosity, he kept a diary of his illnesses until he was physically incapable of holding a pen. Lovecraft was listed along with his parents on the Phillips family monument. In 1977, fans erected a headstone in Swan Point Cemetery in which they inscribed his name, the dates of his birth and death, and the phrase, "I am Providence," which is the line from one of his personal letters. So, all in all, what are your opinions on H.P. Lovecraft as a person, not his works?
I mean, I'll give him that. It sounds like he had a pretty sad life. A lot of, depression, a lot of death, a lot of failure more than success. It kind of sounds like the whole, this kind of consistent with a lot of authors back in the time, but they don't really see success until after they die. That blows. Because his whole life work was, to be an author and to write and all that stuff, and it doesn't really sound like he ever made it while he was alive. So, I mean, despite him being a racist douchebag, he did lead a pretty tragic life from the sounds of it. But, luckily, I'm not going to go into the specifics of his work, but luckily he made some good work out of it. Just like I said, unfortunately, he didn't get recognized for it very much when he was alive.
Yeah, the thing about H.P. Lovecraft and by the way, one of the details about him, just the fact that he's racist, it does upset me. So it's not the fact that I'm a fan of him particularly, but you have to respect the universe that he had created. You don't have to, honestly, because I know people, if they don't like the person, they're not going to fucking like the work. But I'm pretty good at separating work and art. The only issue with cancer culture nowadays is that if you're still, honestly, if you're still alive, that's one thing. What was just going on with Crystal Castles and Alice Glass?
Oh, yeah. She's basically saying just all the shit that she went through with getting royalties for her music and stuff like that. Basically, she was saying, you shouldn't even listen to Crystal Castles anymore because I don't get paid for it, so you should listen to my standalone stuff.
Yeah, and the fact that she was abused and sexually harassed and stuff like that while at her time within Crystal Castles. Yeah. It's one of those things that she's asking, what she's asking for isn't inherently bad, but it's one of those things that, people kind of don't give a shit, and, I do care. I don't listen to Crystal Castles that often, but I'm occasionally going to listen to Crystal Castles, you know what I mean? Yeah. But it's not an obscene request to make to not listen to a work because of what happened before that. But in H.P. Lovecraft's case, the fact that he died that made his art, his not just his art, sorry, his stories and stuff much more valuable because there's none other like it now. Yeah. And to today, the fact that people are canceling certain artists and stuff like that, it doesn't really matter. You're not supporting them anymore if they're dead. Whereas with it's different with Crystal Castles. You know what I mean? Yeah. This Hennessy's really fucking up the way I'm trying to talk, but you get my point.
I do get just the separation of the art from the artist. It's I can do that. It just seems like a lot of people can't. Despite him being racist and all that, and there's plenty of people that are racist, and it's okay, he wrote something good. I don't have to fucking sit here and just only think about the fact that he wrote it and he was a racist piece of shit. I'm just looking at the world that he created. It doesn't mean, just because he was a racist piece of shit doesn't mean he can't make something good. It's I don't know. I can separate that part of my mind, not thinking about him while I'm fucking thinking about Cthulhu. I don't know.
Yeah. With just really quickly, it was a post of our me and Chris's friend. I'm not going to say his name, but he made a post give me two things to choose between. So I gave him the option between H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe, and he was Edgar Allan Poe. He's because H.P. Lovecraft was a racist douchebag. And I was okay. I'm well, Edgar Allan Poe probably was racist too. And he's yeah, but he named his cat N-word man, which that really was H.P. Lovecraft's cat's name. Just look up the name on Google, man.
Yeah, you look it up. We're not going to say it.
Yeah, we're not going to say it. But to that point, I can also be okay, but Edgar Allan Poe fucked his first cousin, married his first cousin, and was an alcoholic. That doesn't really make, that they're dead. It doesn't fucking matter. You can like their art, not based on their personal preference.
And it's we're not talking about the people, we're talking about their work. We're talking about their work, okay? It's completely different.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. So, alrighty, you guys. You know what it's time for, Chris?
It's time for a Tippler's Tidbit.
Tipplers Tidbit.
Today's Tippler's Tidbit is brought to you by Lord Cthulhu's Dark Ones, a dark chocolatey cereal made for the aspiring harbingers of death and chaos. Are you going to have a busy day praising the old ones and possibly summoning them from their ancient eternal slumber? Well, grab yourself a bowl of Lord Cthulhu's Dark Ones and give yourself that dark chocolatey energy to keep you remaining devout and, absolutely insane. Hail Cthulhu! Hail the old gods! Joking, of course. We do not currently have any sponsors, but if you're a listener and have a business you'd like to promote on our show, feel free to reach out to us and maybe we can make that happen. For more on how to contact us, please hang around until the end of the episode. Now then, today's Tippler's Tidbit is the following. One of, if not the strongest alcohols available to consumers is Spiritus Vodka. It is 192 proof, which makes it 96% alcohol. Yeah.
God damn.
Made in Poland. It was approved a few years ago to be sold in New York State. The Polish-made Spiritus Vodka is the strongest liquor for sale in the U.S. Quote, "It's like getting punched in the solar plexus," one sampler told the New York Post. Yeah, I imagine, because it's pretty much just drinking straight alcohol. Or as one liquor retailer recited in a frightening endorsement, pilots in Siberia used to drink it. And this is all coming from foodandwine.com. But contrary to this information, however, according to the alcoholproblemsandsolutions.org, no alcoholic beverage can be over about 190 proof or 95% alcohol. At a higher proof, the beverage self-dilutes by drawing moisture from the air. So, who knows if Spiritus truly is the strongest liquor for sale. It could still very much so be just as strong as Everclear, which was the previously strongest at 190 proof. This has been your Tippler's Tidbit.
Tipplers Tidbit.
Now, it is time to get to the nightmare version of Sleeping Beauty. Cthulhu. The great dreamer, the sleeper of R'lyeh, the slumbering one, the great Cthulhu. Chances are very likely that at some point in your life you've seen a description or depiction of Cthulhu, or at least heard reference to him. The Great Green Ancient One is by far the most famous entity in the Cthulhu Mythos, and thus a fitting starting point for our series here. We're going to take a look at the literary history of Cthulhu, as well as give a brief description of his mythological background within the Mythos universe. First, a note on pronunciation. Lovecraft himself gave several different pronunciations for the creature's name throughout his life, including Kalulu, with a heavy guttural first syllable.
Like that.
Yeah, so basically, just kind of weird gibberish, because it's supposed to be spoken in a language that humans aren't able to pronounce. So it'd be Kalulu. The most common pronunciation, however, is Cthulhu, popularized much later after Lovecraft's death. The truth of the matter is that it's an alien name and to be spoken in an alien tongue, so, no answer is really right. You can say it however you want. But since Cthulhu is the most common pronunciation, that's what we're going to continue to use. Contrary to popular belief, Cthulhu is only ever featured in a single story by Howard Phillips Lovecraft. That's what HP stands for, in case you're wondering. The Call of Cthulhu, published in 1928. Lovecraft very rarely showcased any of the ancient beings, including Cthulhu, in his stories, so the Call of Cthulhu is a bit of a special case. The story in... Oh, I'm sorry, I lost my place for a second. The story, in typical Lovecraft fashion, is told through various letters, manuscripts, and conversations. The climax of the story is the terrifying account of a sailor directly encountering Cthulhu as the Great Old One emerges from his home in the fiction-sunken city of R'lyeh. Cthulhu's name was mentioned in a few others of Lovecraft's stories and letters, but it was other writers that really ran with the concept of Cthulhu and R'lyeh. Writers such as August Derleth, Robert Bloch, Charles Stross, Neil Gaiman, and a fuck ton of others that have taken Lovecraft's foundation and brought Cthulhu to many other different locales and situations, from ancient past to modern day. You can easily find collections of books and stories featuring only Cthulhu. As for Cthulhu's backstory within the mythos, let me make one thing clear. The concept of canon doesn't carry much weight within the mythos. Many different writers have given wildly varying accounts of Cthulhu, his thoughts and intentions or lack thereof, and his backstory and history. So what I'm going to present to you for Cthulhu's story is common info that I have available to me, but feel free to believe or make up whatever you want, because really it's just, open source pretty much.
Yeah.
After all, that's what Lovecraft did, and he fully encouraged others to do the same. Cthulhu was likely born on the planet Vrul, located in the 23rd Nebula. His father is Nug, who doesn't have much information on him except, being the father of Cthulhu, and being the brother of Yeb, which is Nug's apparent twin, and his grandparents are Yog-Sothoth and Shub-NIggurath. It is heavily implied, if not outright stated, that Yog-Sothoth is omniscient and is locked outside the universe, meaning he can know and see all of space-time all at once, of which there is no secret hidden from Yog-Sothoth. So, kind of like a dark concept of God. Mm-hmm. Yog-Sothoth has many different appearances throughout the various stories of the mythos by various authors. However, there seems to be a common agreement that Yog-Sothoth visually manifests as a mass of glowing orbs, with eyes or tendrils in some versions, and in others simply just orbs. As for Shub-NIggurath, she is portrayed as an enormous mass which exudes black tentacles, slime-dripping mouths, and short, writhing goat legs. So pretty fucking creepy.
Yeah.
Small creatures are continually spat forth by the monstrosity, which are either consumed into the miasmatic form or escape to some monstrous life somewhere else. Essentially, she is an extremely perverse twist on a fertility goddess, which, pretty fucked up one at that. Finally, Cthulhu's great grandfather, is Azathoth himself. More on him later.
At some point, Cthulhu traveled to the binary star of Zoth, where he mated and produced the great older ones known as... oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Of course I'm going to say these fucking... Okay. Gatath-the-Noah, Yog-Sothoth, and Zoth-Amog. Cthulhu and his children traveled then to Saturn, followed by Earth, along with a species known as the star spawn of Cthulhu. It is unclear where the star spawn originated from, but it's possible that the shape-shifting aliens worshipped Great Cthulhu and changed their form to resemble the deity. Regardless, the alien group landed on a continent in the Pacific Ocean, and they built the great stone city of R'lyeh, made from strange green stones and pieced together in ways that are foreign to any human design. Upon their arrival, the aliens received immediate resistance from another species known as the Elder Things, who had lived on the planet for millennia. The Elder Things were no strangers to war, but eventually the two groups came to an agreement and the planet was shared for the time being. Cthulhu and his spawn enjoyed the freedom of the planet Earth, but at some point Cthulhu went into a deep hibernation within R'lyeh. The reasons for this are unclear. During this hibernation, humanity evolved on Earth, and Cthulhu often communicated with individuals through dreams, slowly creating the cult of Cthulhu. Disaster eventually struck the corpse city of R'lyeh, though, sinking the city, Cthulhu, and much of the continent into the ocean. Reasons for this disaster vary from changes in the moon of stars to being attacked by other ancient aliens, or even to a secret weapon from the Elder Things. Regardless, though, Cthulhu and his spawn were trapped under the ocean and left with little to do than wait. So basically, they got fucked over somehow, which isn't clear, and they were on a city, basically H.P. Lovecraft's version of Atlantis. R'lyeh has risen out of the ocean at various times, but never for very long within the mythos, and the cult of Cthulhu has continued to grow throughout the ages. As they meet in secrecy, they chant the day when R'lyeh will rise permanently out of the ocean, and the dreaded Cthulhu will finally retake the world. As mentioned before, Cthulhu is by far the most popular entity from the entire Cthulhu mythos to the point where the entire fictional universe is fucking named after him. Lovecraft himself, however, favored the term the Yog-Sothothery to refer to a collection of entities and artifacts. And by the way, the Yog-Sothothery that he termed was also a joke, so nobody really knows if he actually called his work of fiction or continual work of fictions the Yog-Sothothery, or if he just didn't really give a shit what you called it. But I offered two main reasons to why Cthulhu is so well known in popular culture. First and foremost is Cthulhu's image itself. And I think Chris is going to agree with me, and I hope you do too. But I almost said Cthulhu while I'm saying do too. I hope you Cthulhu. Anyway, Cthulhu is instantly recognizable in the grand majority of artistic depictions of him because it's a very concrete form. He's almost always depicted as vaguely anthropoidal with an octopus head, massive tentacles in his face, claws and wings, and a lot of green. Other entities in the Cthulhu mythos tend to be a bit harder to describe and vary from writer to writer. Yog-Sothoth, Shub-NIggurath, and Azathoth are often described as just masses of bubbles, tentacles, flesh, mouth, teeth, and other vague appendages. But when you look at an image of Cthulhu, you generally know exactly what you're looking at. This has helped a lot with recognition, but it also helps that Cthulhu is often well regarded for his image, whether the depiction is meant to be cool, scary, or adorable. Cthulhu can cover a lot of ground. Like, I'm sure Chris has seen like the fucking little Cthulhu plushies, like, and like I think I've seen one in Spencer's and shit.
I haven't. That'd be cool though.
No, there really are Cthulhu plushies.
Yeah,
fucking
sick.
Google it. Secondly, Cthulhu represents a very real and tangible fear. Lovecraft was inspired by his own fear of water and the ocean when he created Cthulhu, and it's a fairly common fear amongst people. Sure, pondering our existence and place within the grand scheme of the cosmos can certainly be scary, and that's pretty much what scares the shit out of me, honestly. But the dark depths of water is something that for a lot of people is a much closer, realer fear, which I actually have that fear. I don't know about Chris, but like I cannot fucking, especially like in the dark, like if I go in the deep end of a pool and there's no fucking light, fuck that. I'm immediately getting out.
Yeah, and I actually think we talked about what those fears when we were doing the ocean episode.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I can't. but yeah, combining the unknown aspect of the deep ocean with the monstrosity of a giant alien slumbering beneath us makes a very fucking effective way to get into people's heads. A smaller reason perhaps is a bit of a snowball effect because of the two other reasons. Cthulhu has been featured in many different types of media, from books to films to video games to board games across the internet in many different forms. Cthulhu has become a firm part of popular culture in general, and many people's first interaction with Cthulhu Mythos involved the slumbering one himself. Even the Call of Cthulhu RPG game has been a big part of spreading Cthulhu and the mythos across the world, and very often when people ask which story they should read to be introduced into the Cthulhu Mythos, the answer is the Call of Cthulhu. Cthulhu is a very important part of the mythos, but he's certainly not the most interesting part of it. So, in general, like, what do you think about Cthulhu as a character versus, like, what's available in the rest of the Cthulhu mythos?
Yeah, like you said, I'm like with everybody else. I like him mostly because of the depiction of him. He's got a very recognizable form. Whenever you see the fucking giant octopus tentacle monster, you automatically know it's fucking Cthulhu. There's really no confusing his visage. So that's what I like about him the most. I really like the depiction that we're given of him. He looks cool. And the like, messing with people through dreams and shit like that, that's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do agree. There's some more interesting stuff that H.P. Lovecraft came up with. I can't necessarily remember, but there was a period of time where I was like reading more of some of his works and about more of the gods and stuff that come from his mythos. So there are more interesting stuff, but it's just, I think, mostly due to the fact that, like you had talked about, they're kind of more like amorphous blobs for the most part. So they don't really sound as scary or anything because you can't really picture them exactly.
Yeah, like Shub-NIggurath, she's mostly depicted as like the form that I remember first being introduced to her as is like kind of like a tree of life, like a perverted tree of life, but she's like just a mass of like, it's a mix of like bark and tentacles, and like right now we described it as being like goat's feet and tentacles and mouths and stuff like that. Like you can pretty much just vaguely describe any character like that, and it will pretty much cover a fucking H.P. Lovecraft character. But the details on those characters, or on these deities rather, are more interesting than their actual, physical description. But yeah, just the fact that Cthulhu is the only one with like a very definitive physical description, and like that's the only real way to identify the Cthulhu Mythos, is pretty interesting. Anyway, like I don't know. It's just one of those things that like. I think this is the only mythos that really don't really describe almost every single fucking deity. Like with the Greek mythology episode, like you can pretty much describe every single one. Like I think like the only ones that are like vague is like Aphrodite and stuff, just because she's supposed to be the most beautiful and the goddess of love and stuff like that. But since the aspect of beauty is subjective, does that mean that she would come to you in the most like a attractive form that you would see, or is she just across the board attractive to a point where it would be universally fucking mind-blowing to any man to approach her, or a woman, you know what I mean?
Yeah, good point.
That's pretty much the only character that I can think of that has kind of a vague description though. But yeah, that's all I think on the matter. Yeah.
All right, well, next on the list is the terrifying Azathoth. The primal chaos, the blind idiot god, the daemon sultan, Azathoth. It's difficult to discuss any of the other powerful deities in the Lovecraft mythos without first discussing Azathoth. Azathoth is unquestionably the most powerful and most feared of the outer gods, and has a pivotal role in the entire mythos. Azathoth was first mentioned by H.P. Lovecraft in a note that he wrote to himself that read, Azathoth, quote, hideous name, followed by a separate note that read, quote, a terrible pilgrimage to seek the knighted throne of the far daemon sultan Azathoth. Lovecraft attempted to work this idea into a full novel, but all that remains is a 500-word fragmented title, Azathoth. Lovecraft would go on to mention the outer god's name in the books The Dream Quest of the Unknown Kadath, The Whisper in the Darkness, and The Dreams in the Witch House, and The Haunter of the Dark. There's a lot of stuff just about the dark.
Yeah.
Though Lovecraft mentioned Azathoth's name multiple times throughout the various stories, the god himself is never described in detail, nor met by any character. Other writings would continue this trend, speaking of Azathoth in only hushed tones and fragments of nightmares. Azathoth is located at the center of all existence, though some wilder theories speculate that he's actually located at the center of our planet. Azathoth is generally described as a shapeless, chaotic mass surrounded by the servitors of the outer gods, whose purpose is to endlessly play the accursed flutes and maddening drums to keep Azathoth slumbering, which is kind of cool. Like, I don't know, it's weird. Just constantly playing some melodies to keep him asleep, or else he'll wake up and destroy everything. Azathoth is the head of the outer gods, likely being their creator, and it is generally believed that Azathoth is responsible for creating the entire universe. So, again, more of like a dark god, God as we think of him.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of theories related to Azathoth and his existence. One theory says that Azathoth is merely a puppet himself for an even greater, infinitely more horrible creature, which would be hard to imagine.
Yeah, it's very hard to top with Azathoth's description.
Yeah. Another says that Azathoth wasn't always blind or an idiot, but was involved in a great cosmic war eons and eons ago, leaving him as the only surviving remnant. Another theory entirely, and one that I agree with, is that Azathoth's creation only exists in his dreams. And it's that of our current existence. Azathoth knows not what he dreams, but everything from the primordial bacteria on the earth up to Yog-Sothoth himself is a figment of Azathoth's imagination. When, not if, Azathoth awakens, we will wink out of existence and Azathoth will be left alone yet again, which is a really, really cool concept. I fucking dig that one.
Yeah.
Like the fact that all of this is just like basically him dreaming, and then when he wakes up, it's the reality of he's just by himself. That's cool. It's really cool. Since I support this theory, this will have a lot to do with my thoughts on fucking I always struggle with this name, Nyarlathotep as well, and his Azathoth's and Azathoth's cultists on Earth are few and are absolutely a completely insane group of people. It's difficult then to ascertain what a cultist of Azathoth then believes, but assuredly is a profoundly nihilistic worldview, because you basically have to be wanting the world to end.
Yeah.
Generally, they wish to summon Azathoth or a fragment of Azathoth into the mortal world to bring destruction and madness. Azathoth shows no favoritism towards his cultists, as he is likely not even aware of their existence. But a cultist would either refuse to believe that or just flat out not care anyway. It's unclear if any of his cultists have ever succeeded in conjuring forth a part of Azathoth, although some claim that the Tunguska event was actually caused by Azathoth and not by a meteor. The Tunguska event, by the way, was a massive explosion that occurred near the, and this is going to be a hard word for me to say, Podkemnaya Tunguska River in the, in Yangsik Governorate, now the Krasnoyarsk Krai, I'm sorry, Russia, on the morning of June 30th, 1908. So just a meteor, or not a meteor, but a big explosion that happened near a river in Russia is what I was trying to say there. The explosion flattened an estimated 80 million trees over an area of 830 square miles of forest, and an eyewitness report suggests that at least 3 people may have died in the event. Anyway, it is often said that Azathoth is not this creature's true name, which not even the Necronomicon itself holds. Azathoth's true name commands respect and fear with the most entities in the Mythos universe. Like I've said before, your canon can be whatever you wish when it comes to the Mythos, so honestly, just think whatever you want about Azathoth. Azathoth is a very interesting part of the Mythos, in my personal opinion, because he, represents like the very core of what cosmic horror is all about. Completely apathetic existence of an alien creature that is completely outside of our realm of understanding. There is no relating to Azathoth, no comprehension, no sympathy. When Azathoth awakens, we don't. He's one of the ones that, like I was earlier talking about, interested me when I was looking up more stuff on H.P. Lovecraft's other works. Because, I don't know, I like that indifference. He's not evil, he's not good, he's not anything, he's just... And I don't even like the term of, calling him the blind idiot god. I just think he's just completely indifferent. You just gotta imagine complete indifference.
Well, it's just the fact...
destruction.
It's the fact that he... what's gonna happen when he wakes up is a fact. And there's nothing to stop it. So all they have to do is eternally keep him asleep and don't fucking worry about it. That's pretty much it. It's almost like if someone has a gun to your head and you're just I don't even know. It's just hey, just so you know, this gun's eventually going to go off. And I don't know what to tell you. You're eventually just going to be okay. There's nothing I could fucking do about it. But I think Azathoth is actually a good point on, existence in general. Because that's kind of how I think about existence in general anyway. It's it can all end fucking anytime.
Yeah.
At any point, whenever. And I think we talked about this in the multiverse episode or something, when we're talking about or no, it was the 2012 one. I don't fucking remember. Whenever I was talking about the Higgs boson shit, the Higgs boson particle.
Yeah.
The fact that we're essentially living on a knife's edge at all time, and all we really need is like a vacuum of these different fields of energy to collide, and that's it. It'll just fucking snap us out of existence. Like literally, reality itself will just fall apart. That's pretty much the basis of Azathoth. But the fact that someone was thinking of that kind of shit whenever it was like the early 1900s, that's just insanely fucking introspective. And like it kind of gives you more view on like how this man thought and stuff. That's why I personally have respect for the guy, at least his philosophy for like life in general. Because I'm not nihilistic, but I do kind of think like I'm kind of on the side of like Thanos, you know what I mean? Like where I'm just like, yeah, if we had fucking less people, we'd be able to eat. But I'm not murderous. I'm not going to go out and fucking be like, all right, well, let's commit genocide. But I get it. Anyway, I don't know. Like Azathoth is just one of those characters that he's insanely fucking cool to think of, but unfortunately, like there's no actual description of him like most of his characters. But the idea of him is fucking terrifying. So, last but not least, we have Nyarlathotep. The crawling chaos, the faceless god, the messenger of the outer gods, Nyarlathotep. I make it no secret that Nyarlathotep is my favorite in the Cthulhu Mythos, and this is interesting since Nyarlathotep is likely the most unique entity in the mythos, and that he is the most human god, or at least likes to fashion himself that way. See, while most of the entities in the mythos and in cosmic horror in general are based on alien concepts that are foreign to our human mind and are thus horrific in that sense, Nyarlathotep is a different beast entirely. H.P. Lovecraft supposedly based Nyarlathotep on a nightmare he had as a child, when which he turned into a short story called Nyarlathotep. In the story, Nyarlathotep is depicted as a man resembling an Egyptian pharaoh who wanders the earth, showing off strange magical artifacts, drawing in more and more supporters into a mad haze. It is possible that Lovecraft based this idea on Nikola Tesla, which is kind of cool. The man list continues into it is implied that the world is coming to an end. Lovecraft goes on to include or mention Nyarlathotep in the Dream Quest and Unknown Kadath, fungi from Yog-Sothoth, and the Dreams in the Witch House, the Haunter in the Dark, and several others, making Nyarlathotep Lovecraft's most used deity, more so even than Cthulhu, because fucking, I'm sorry, but Cthulhu only showed up in the one fucking book. Nyarlathotep would go on to be used by many other writers, including Robert Bloch, Lynn Carter, and August Derleth, providing many different forms for Nyarlathotep. Stephen King even used him in The Stand and the Dark Tower series as the character Randall Flagg. And they've even gone so far as to turn Nyarlathotep into an animated teenage girl in a series of manga and anime. Nyarlathotep is said to have 1,000 different forms. Most are said to be horrific and terrifying. Some of his forms, however, such as the pharaoh from mentioned in the short story, perfectly resembled humans. It is likely, then, he is capable of assuming any form he wishes. So, base form, he's a fucking just shapeshifter. Perhaps up to any entities, including in the mythos, Nyarlathotep is also capable of many different supernatural abilities, many of which he uses in various forms. So, kind of like he's kind of the Ben 10 of fucking of H.P. Lovecraft's deities, because it seems like he has to switch forms to use these different abilities. But these abilities include superhuman strength, invulnerability, flight, mental influence, and many forms of magic. Nyarlathotep's greatest strength, however, is his power to manipulate. Often making bargains or deals with those he deals with, he is conniving, deceptive, and almost never trustworthy. Combined with the ability to take any shape, Nyarlathotep is a force to be reckoned with. What follows is my own thoughts and beliefs about Nyarlathotep. Again, none of this is canon, but it's what I choose to think about the Faceless God. Something that is occasionally debated in many people interested in the Cthulhu Mythos is, power level, which fucking power level seems to be like a universal thing, especially with like manga and anime. Like if you are into Dragon Ball, you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about when I bring up power level.
Yep.
That which entities in the mythos that could defeat other ones. Discussion in common is almost every universe of piece of fiction, but is often hand-waved during discussions of the mythos because there is not just enough evidence of ability or power to make a reasonable assumption, and B, the mythos isn't really meant to be dissected in that manner. So, H.P. Lovecraft kind of made all of his characters OP or overpowered in the way that it's not really meant to be talked about or dissected in the fact that, like, oh, this god could kick this god's ass because it's fucking redundant. These are both true and why I don't normally discuss such things, but for Nyarlathotep, I like to make Nyarlathotep, I make an exception for this. I posit that as far as capability goes, Nyarlathotep is the strongest being in the Cthulhu Mythos. Now, of course, as of Azathoth can blink us out of existence with just a thought, and Yog-Sothoth knows all and sees all, but Nyarlathotep is potentially the only deity that can actively affect our entire existence and could easily destroy us if he wished. This brings me to a second point. Why doesn't he destroy us? If he's meant to bring down, bring doom and destruction to Earth, which is his purpose, what's stopping him? There really isn't a good explanation for this, so here's mine. Nyarlathotep doesn't destroy us for the same reason that the Joker never kills Batman. Nyarlathotep is a creature that delights in madness and manipulation. He could destroy us with, but that would leave him, with nothing to toy with. There, of course, are other sentient races in the mythos, but it's likely that none offer up the enjoyment to Nyarlathotep as humans do. It's been suggested that Nyarlathotep is the only one that can bring bring in the other outer gods as well as the great old ones into our mortal realm. So Nyarlathotep himself can fucking bring like Azathoth, or he can wake up Azathoth to destroy everything. And to that point, I would suggest then that he is purposefully not doing so. While we know that Nyarlathotep appeared to the ancient Egyptians in various guises and was revered as both a pharaoh and as a god, I highly doubt that he would have stopped there. A god that can take on any form and who is delighted in manipulation and deception would have likely taken other shapes to continue to manipulate the human species. Who's to say Nyarlathotep wasn't actually Hitler in disguise, or Stalin, or Paul the Apostle, or that Nyarlathotep is responsible for every major religion we have currently? He could have been Nikola Tesla, or Rasputin, or Ted Cruz. Nyarlathotep is immortal, powerful, and very patient. He is the perfect combination of the Joker and Satan, and we are all simply his toys. So, dude, what do you think about Nyarlathotep, the faceless god?
Yeah, he's cool, and like I do like the fact that he's like the only one that actually has like a human version of himself. Like I like that. I just like that he's like a tangible god, you know what I mean? Like if he can appear in human form, then it's like you could fight him or whatever. Like I don't know, kind of like Cthulhu, how we were saying he has like a physical form that actually makes sense and has an actual shape that you can describe. I mean, the only thing with Nyarlathotep is that he can shapeshift, but still, I don't know, he's cool, he's interesting. He's not one that I really knew anything about, so.
Well, yeah, whenever I was doing my research, I was actually doing my research on Azathoth, and I came across him, and I was like, oh, he has the power to bring in, like he can literally summon other fucking gods in the mythos. So I'm like, so that means he could just wake up fucking Azathoth at any moment. So guaranteed. Like, and he's the only one that currently walks the earth. Like, he currently walks it and fucks with people. None of the other ones actually walk. They usually like walk or are slumbering. Most of the like Eldritch Gods are slumbering. And it really depends on what story you're reading, and because H.P. Lovecraft only had the one instance with Cthulhu when he woke up. I don't really know if he like actually. Sadly I never read Call of Cthulhu, and I'm pretty sure Chris never did either. We're just a fan of his work and his influence on the media in general, and we like the idea of the Eldritch Gods. And when we looked into it, like I think Chris initially told me about Azathoth before. That's why I put him in his episode. But yeah, it was just one of those ideas where it's just like literally every single god H.P. Lovecraft has is super fucking overpowered, but the fact that Nyarlathotep literally can just bring in all the other overpowered gods whenever, it kind of makes him like stand out to me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, again, it follows that version of, like, he doesn't actually have a concrete form since he's a shapeshifter. But, like, if you Google a picture of Nyarlathotep, his, you know, apparent base form or artist depiction of him are fucking terrifying. But, anyway, alrighty. Let's get into where the Cthulhu Mythos has snuck its way into movies and games with today's Tipplers. Take 2.
Come on. So what's holding everything up here?
Art department.
So the grips are holding us back?
All right, try that take one more time.
1 second.
Hey, quiet on the set!
Tipplers take 2. Mark.
Action!
Holy shit! Has Cthulhu fucking made his way into the media? Because, honestly, like, have you heard about him until, like, what, 5-10 years ago? Because fucking, like, I never learned about H.P. Lovecraft in school or anything like that. I never learned about any of his works. But I'm pretty sure the first time I ever heard about him was actually, what was it? I think it was the game that got called out, the Call of Cthulhu game, which I wanted to buy. But I think I ended up not liking it. I might have to revisit it. But anyway, there's a couple movies that, of course, he is in. One of them is just titled Cthulhu. Honestly, it doesn't look that interesting. I'm not gonna lie. It looks kind of weird. So it was a 2007 film. It was a horror thriller. It's based off a Seattle history professor drawn to his estranged family on the Oregon coast to execute his late mother's estate. Makes discoveries regarding his father's New Age cult, which takes on dangerous and apocalyptic significance. It had a 4.6 on IMDb out of 10, a 62% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 41% on Metacritic. I honestly could give a shit about that movie. I don't know why. It's one of those things where, like, you'll see my point here in a minute. It's one of those things where, like, you don't want to fuck it up. It's one of those things that it's just so fucking special as an idea, like the Cthulhu Mythos. You don't really want to fuck it up. But at the same time, how H.P. Lovecraft made his work, it was mostly based off of, like, everyone else running with it, not really him finishing the story. You know, to fucking start that off, who is the writer of Game of Thrones? It's I almost said Tolkien.
Yeah, George R.R. Martin.
George R.R. Martin. Yeah, like, George R.R. Martin, like, his story isn't finished, but, like, to a point, like, with the show, they had to finish it himself because Game of Thrones, he never fucking finished writing. Like, he can't even fucking finish writing Elden Ring. Like,
yeah.
And by the way, Elden Ring is a game that I'm fucking waiting for, but I know he's gonna fuck up. So, but yeah. So Cthulhu, I don't know. You can check it out. 62% on Rotten Tomatoes isn't super bad. It's actually higher than a lot of movies Rotten Tomatoes likes to give it. So, I'm gonna skip over one because there's a fucking twist to the second one. So In the Mouth of Madness is one of them. It actually stars the same guy from what the fuck is it? Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
it has
also in Event Horizon.
Yeah, Event Horizon.
Forget his name.
Yeah, it's directed by John Carpenter. I can't remember his name, but yeah, it's the fucking fuck. I can't remember his name. Sam Neill. That's what his name is.
Sam Neill.
Yeah, so when horror novelist Sutter Kane goes missing, insurance investigator John Trent scrutinizes the claim made by his publisher, Jackson Harglow, and endeavors to retrieve a yet-to-be-released manuscript and ascertain the writer's whereabouts, accompanied by the novelist's editor, Linda Stiles, and distributed by Nightmares from Reading Kane's other novels. Trent makes an eerie nighttime trek to the supernatural town in New Hampshire. And I remember one part of this movie. It's fucking terrifying. It's when Sam Neill, like, reads a part of the book or some shit, and they're, like, on the side of the highway, and he, like, bends backwards and his head, like, turns around. You know exactly what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Yeah. It's fucking terrifying. I don't know what it is about Sam Neill when he's introduced to, like, a horror show, but he's so fucking good in horror movies. I don't know why. And off topic, but he's also good in Peaky Blinders. He's a fucking piece of shit in that show, too. Another one is The Stand, which I mentioned earlier, or Chris mentioned, I can't remember. He plays Randall Flagg, which is the Man in Black You know what I mean? Like if you ever watch the movie The Dark Tower, he's the Man in Black, or the new president of the United States in The Stand, I believe. And it's kind of his Stephen King's depiction of Satan, but also another version of Nyarlathotep. It's really cool. The Stand is fucking amazing. My mom's obsessed with it, and I don't know. It's a really good take on like the end of the world and stuff like that. It's more like the Rapture, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're actually, I was going to say they're making a new version of it too. That's coming out soon. I'm not sure when, but yeah, it's coming out soon.
Wait, is another, because there's a movie and there's a television series.
Well, it was like what's the term for it? Like a limited series. So it's basically like one long ass movie. And I don't know if they're doing this new one the same way or not, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be another TV show.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see The Stand modernized, honestly. Like I'm not against that. Chris has one called Dagon. What is that?
Yeah, so that one's a movie, and it sucks. I haven't got a chance to see it, but I've heard a lot about it. But it was adapted from obviously the story Dagon, and then also I think it takes some parts from The Shadow over Innsmouth. But if I'm not mistaken, this is one of the ones that I have heard that is one of the better adaptions of H.P. Lovecraft's work, like better adaptions into a movie, because there's a lot of movies made that reference his stuff, but most of them aren't really that great.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is one of the ones that I heard is actually better. And like I said, I haven't got a chance to see it, but maybe check it out if you're interested. It's a little bit older, so some of the stuff is going to be outdated and stuff like that. And the ratings for it aren't very good from what I got. It's got a 69% on Rotten Tomatoes, 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb. Not great, but like I said, I've heard it's one of the better adaptions, so maybe check it out. I'm going to definitely try to check it out at some point.
Yeah, and then there's another one that Chris brought up is the Leviathan.
Yeah, and that's another one that I've just heard about. Haven't got a chance to watch it. I actually tried to start watching it once and just didn't get to finish it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's another older one too. It's from 1989. And I don't even remember which this one specifically references, but I know it has to do with a big creature that's in the sea. Obviously, kind of referencing Cthulhu. So obviously without giving too many spoilers, it does show the creature in the movie. So if you want to watch a little creature feature, that one's a good one to go to, with little Cthulhu inspired creature.
What about Color Out of Space?
Yeah, and this one's actually a newer one. I did get to watch this one. Color Out of Space, it has what's his face, fucking Nick Cage. So it has Nicolas Cage in it, and
Okay.
I will give him that his quirkiness and craziness actually works a little bit better in this movie. I'm trying to remember which this one references. I'm gonna have to look it up real quick. But yeah, it's based off of H.P. Lovecraft's work. I actually think the story that it's based off of is called The Color Out of Space. So basically, what happens in the movie is a meteor comes down. It's obviously infected with some sort of entity, and it starts transforming the stuff around his house because the meteor lands in their front yard, and basically just shows them all start going crazy and shit changing all around them. Super cool movie visually. I won't say that it was the best movie that I've watched in a while.
As for plot,
because it's, I don't know, it's exactly what you kind of, would expect out of this kind of stuff. I honestly think they spent more time focusing on visuals than they did for really the storyline or acting or anything like that. And there is some cool body horror, which is, a big plus for me. I'm a real big fan of body horror movies.
Yeah, Thing and shit.
Yeah, so it kind of has some stuff like that. It's not a bad movie. So I would say to check it out. Definitely worth the watch, especially since it's directly inspired from H.P. Lovecraft's work.
Yeah.
And a better performance out of Nick Cage than most of his movies.
All right, yeah. All right. So this one is it's a little bit kind of out of left field, honestly, and I didn't expect this at all. It's a newer movie with what the fuck's her name?
Kristen Stewart.
Yeah, Kristen Stewart, called Underwater. The base of it is disaster strikes more than 6 miles below the ocean surface when water crashes through the walls of a drilling station. Led by their captain, the survivors realize that their only hope is to walk across the seafloor to reach the main part of the facility. This kind of... I'm sorry, I know I brought up Soma before. This is exactly the plot of Soma. But they soon find themselves in a fight for their lives when they come under attack from mysterious and deadly creatures that no one has ever seen. So, I kind of already spoiled it by it being in this list, but... the creatures are the star spawn, and there is a creature that in the subtitles or in the movie production they call the Behemoth, but it is actually Cthulhu himself.
Yeah.
And that makes me way more fucking interested in this movie because I read an article and it's essentially the director saying, the director and writer, I think, they're saying like, yeah, it's a love letter to Cthulhu and the Cthulhu Mythos. However, we didn't want it marketed that way because we wanted it to be a surprise. And that makes it so much more of like a sweeter gift. I don't know why. And that's why I was saying like I don't really like the fact that there's a movie called Cthulhu just because like it's one of those things that you don't want to fuck up, but at the same time you can fuck it up because H.P. Lovecraft even fucking made it apparent that he didn't really give a shit about this storyline. I mean, he obviously cared, but like he wanted other people to run with it. But, like, the way that this movie was, like, made and stuff, I haven't watched it. I'm definitely going to watch it now. But just the fact...
I've watched it.
Is it all right?
It's okay. Again, kind of like Color Out of Space. Like, it's worth a watch, but nothing, like, special. Definitely could have been better, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
So if you're in the mood for, like, you know, a movie with, like, Cthulhu-type shit or just underwater creature stuff, it's a good watch. It's definitely like got its good moments, but
yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like it looked cool. I would have watched it outside of that, but like it's not a priority for me to watch. But then like just learning the fact that like oh yeah, it's actually secretly about Cthulhu and the Starspawn, and like that brings so much more value to the movie for me. Like even if it's not that great visually or if it's not that scary, it's just one of those things that it makes it interesting. To be, you know, in on it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, so I'm definitely going to give that one a watch. In the Math of Madness, I really fucking want to watch again. Another one is called The Void. That's another one of Chris's. So go ahead.
Yeah, and this is another one where kind of like the Leviathan, it's not directly like an influence from H.P. Lovecraft, but it has very big like H.P. Lovecraft vibes. And you can definitely see that there's the influence there. So basically, like the story, without giving too much away, is just like these people end up trapped in a hospital and they're surrounded by a cult that's outside. And as the story develops, they end up realizing that there's this like portal to another world that's opened up inside the hospital, and a lot of really crazy shit starts happening is all I can say. If you're into body horror, like I was talking about, if you're into like movies like The Thing, or if you've seen Color Out of Space and you like the body horror stuff, this movie drills that shit home. This is probably one of the best movies I've seen for body horror aside from The Thing. Okay. So I wouldn't say it was I didn't fucking fall in love with this movie, but for the body horror alone, I will definitely watch it again just because I was blown away at how well they did with, you know, obviously not being like a huge title company doing it. So even if you don't want to watch it for the Cthulhu or H.P. Lovecraft vibes or whatever, if you like body horror, definitely give it a watch. I think it's still on Netflix. Yeah, it's pretty creepy too. It's got pretty creepy moments.
I think, okay, sorry, going off topic here, I think that's why you like Dead Space 2 so much whenever we played it together. Because one of the first scenes from the game of Dead Space 2 is a dude getting stabbed through his chest by, I forgot what they're called, but it's basically one of the aliens that, like, can infect others. No. There's a type of necromorph that does that.
Oh, you
though.
just mean the specific type? Yeah.
Yeah, but so it's like it looks like a kind of like a butterfly stingray weird shit, and it stabs this dude through the chest while he's trying to save you, and then all of a sudden like his fucking neck starts popping and shit, and then like his face splits open and his eyes pop out and he like fucking screams at you. And like me and Chris were fucking blown away. Like that was the scariest shit we have ever fucking experienced while playing a game at the time. Yeah. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know Chris liked The Thing. I just didn't. Sorry, I know you liked The Thing, but I just didn't realize like you liked body horror in general.
Yeah, well, and it definitely stems from the fact that The Thing is probably like my hands down favorite horror movie. I've seen it so many times. So The Void giving me that body horror fix was like, I was like, okay, even though I didn't care for the movie overall like that much, just the fact that they did so well with the body horror stuff, I was like, all right, I'll keep it in my, my little collection of horror movie favorites.
See, I think that's why I like H.P. Lovecraft so much, or at least his stories, not the person. Don't fucking cancel me for please. But I think that's why I like his work so much is because my type of horror is very okay, it's half like Japanese yurei kind of ghosts where they're very jittery and like they like glitch and shit like that. Like that scares the fuck out of me. I was actually showing Chris a video game that I'm playing. Like I couldn't get him get in the scare, but yeah, there's a type of ghost that's a yurei and it like crawls towards you on the walls and shit. It's fucking terrifying. And there's the other half, which is all occultist and like summoning demons and stuff like that, which is why I love the Evil Dead and H.P. Lovecraft in general. And I like Evil Dead, not for like the joking kind of shit, but like think of like I like the original Evil Dead by Sam Raimi as well, but as well as the newer Evil Dead, with the girl being the main character and stuff like that, because just summoning. Like in that movie in general, kind of side piece, but in that movie in general, they're summoning a minor demon in that movie, and it causes that much fucking chaos. If you've seen the new Evil Dead movie, you know what I'm talking about. But a minor demon is causing that much chaos, and that just lets your imagination go with like, what are the bigger demons like, and what, you know what I mean? And that's kind of how like H.P. Lovecraft is. Like Cthulhu isn't that big of a fucking deity in the mythos, and he can absolutely completely fuck up the world if he were to wake up. And that's kind of like even like stuff that me and Chris have talked about, like going off on our own little like trying to make stories and stuff. We like doing the fact that like even the smaller gods or whatever can absolutely destroy fucking everything, and that's not even that's just a fraction of the bottom of the iceberg, you know what I mean? Anyway, let's get into the games a little bit. To start it off is, of course, the game Call of Cthulhu, which is based off the book, vaguely. It didn't hold my interest, but that's because it's very based off of the book itself, I believe, because it's so much based off of kind of like how most RPGs are. You're talking a lot. Like a lot. I played it for 3 hours, and all I did was fucking talk. Because you're a detective, and you're trying to, like, figure something out. I can't remember the exact details. But you go to this this town on the coast of somewhere, and you're pretty much talking to everyone. You have different objectives and stuff like that. And eventually, it turns into an occultist horror game. I never got to the occultist horror part. I got to this part where you go into, like, a house, and it's a very spooky house. And at that point, I was just so disinterested that it didn't catch my eye. I probably will go back to it eventually. But right now, my fill of horror is based off of this script and the games I've been playing. I've been playing fucking, a lot of horror games and shit. So, like, I need to give it another try. And I hope to God that it gets fucking insane. But obviously, it is a very well-loved game. It did great things for the Cthulhu Mythos as far as recognition goes. So please go play that game. Another game is a game that Chris has played for 2,560 hours. If you didn't know that, Chris, you fucking pile of shit. Is Smite, once again. I believe Cthulhu is a character you can play. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I was going to say that the one good thing about this game is that if you're a fan of Cthulhu and you want to actually play as Cthulhu, This is probably the only game I know that lets you do that. So Smite is a MOBA, kind of like League of Legends or Dota, and it lets you play as various gods from different pantheons. And one of the interesting things that they've done is branch out from the typical gods and goddesses from different pantheons. They started branching out and doing things like King Arthur and Merlin, shit like that. And now they've gone to Cthulhu, which unfortunately they said is going to be the only god that they do from what they're
Eldritch?
calling the old gods pantheon, or the ancient old gods, something like that. So he's the only one that they're ever going to do from H.P. Lovecraft's sort of narratives, and that's fine with me. That's fine, but I wouldn't.
That kind
say
of makes sense.
I wouldn't say he's the most accurately depicted in this game, but he's definitely cool to play. Has probably one of the more interesting ults in the game, which if you know what ults means, I'm not going to sit here and explain it, but he has one of the more interesting abilities, I should say. Very cool, very fun to play, and like I said, probably one of the only games that I know of where it lets you play as him.
Sorry, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not gonna fucking explain it. But I feel like Shub-NIggurath is gonna it would be a lot like just playing Bakasura, just because of the fucking mouth on the chest and
the
shit like
eating
that.
thing.
Yeah, like that's I kind of get it. Like I think like a lot of, and Azathoth wouldn't make sense to put in the game. Yog-Sothoth wouldn't make sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Another one is World of Warcraft, which I didn't fucking know had anything to do with H.P. Lovecraft, or at least inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. I haven't been in World of Warcraft for a long time, so.
So yeah, they have, and not very creatively, but they're called old gods.
Okay.
And they're based off of, very obviously, they're based off of H.P. Lovecraft, which they have their own little storyline and stuff for it. It's pretty coul, but yeah, there's a couple of them. Some of them are named Yshara, Cthulhu, Yog-Sothoth, and N'Zoth. So as you can see, they're very greatly influenced. And yeah, like Yog-Sothoth, I know for a fact is one that you can actually fight in the game in one of their dungeons. And it's basically like just this big tentacle creature with a mouth. And like if you look at her while you're fighting her, it'll like drive you insane. So I don't know. It's pretty cool that they have stuff like that. And like you were saying, like you wouldn't expect it to be in World of Warcraft, but it's in there. So I really do love how like much that all of his mythos stuff is like leaked into other media.
Yeah, it kind of seems like what is it? Because I feel like whenever you bring in like for a while, like if someone ever brought in like tentacles into a game, I'm just like, oh, it's a kraken. It's kraken.
Yeah.
It's Greek mythology. But like now, I'm just kind of like, no. Like as soon as like they bring in like tentacles and the aspect of insanity, I'm just like, yeah, it's H.P. Lovecraft. Like that's it. Like, oh yeah, someone saw this thing and went insane. I'm like, all right, well that's H.P. Lovecraft. You know what I mean? Like it's very blatantly, like it's kind of like the same. Like it's tentacles, going insane, and like devouring. That kind of seems like to be like the three main attributors to H.P. Lovecraft's like tells. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Another one is Skyrim, which I actually fucking didn't know. I played. Okay, I'm not gonna try to sit here and say that I played Skyrim more than Chris, because I fucking have not. But I put in a lot of hours and I didn't see anything in like that brings reference to like H.P. Lovecraft. So what did you see that is H.P. Lovecraftian?
Yeah, so there's actually one of the gods in Skyrim. Well, they're called Daedra, but he's a Daedric prince called Hermaeus Mora, and he's the god of knowledge and memory, and he has his own realm within a different realm, which is like their hell. His realm is called Apocrypha, or Apocrypha, something like that. But it's basically, you go there actually in one of the DLC for Skyrim, and when you go there, it's this horrible, like, it's got this green tint, but there's like tentacles and shit everywhere, and black fucking slime things everywhere, and all sorts of shit. And basically, Hermaeus Mora also appears as like either like a floating eyeball surrounded in like mists, or he can show up as like this amalgamation of like tentacles and stuff.
Oh wait, is like when you go to that, you do go to that realm, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
is
for
it
quests.
is it like all green and shit there?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Okay, yeah. So okay, yeah, that's true. I guess I just didn't see it at the time when I played it.
Yeah,
'Cause
he's
I don't,
definitely inspired by H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, fuck. I can't believe I didn't piece that together at the time because I remember playing that. Another one is fucking definitely out of left field is Call of Duty Black Ops 3 Zombies mode. So if you're one of those people that haven't played zombies, first of all, buy all 3 of the Black Ops games and World at War. Play the fucking zombies mode, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about because these modes are the greatest thing to ever happen to gaming. Probably some of my best gaming moments or gaming memories are playing zombies with my brother and my friends. So in Black Ops 3, unfortunately, I didn't get to play with that many friends in Black Ops 3, but there is a very, very, very heavy presence of H.P. Lovecraftian lore. So in I'm not gonna go through the whole storyline, but essentially the whole basis of the story in the zombies universe within Call of Duty Black Ops is mostly, of course, just about zombies, but it's mostly about Nazis, time travel, and shit like that. Black Ops 3 kind of introduces the aspect of multi-dimensional movement and also like parallel universes and stuff like that. Black Ops 2 kind of touched on that as well. If you guys have played that game, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, then just bear with me and I'll get through it fucking quickly. But yeah, Black Ops 3 literally has Cthulhu in the fucking game. Actually, in one of the maps, it's on a one of the Japanese maps where if you go into the coding engine and you look out, they actually were putting in a Cthulhu Easter egg that they never finished, but they left in the game. There is a head within the ocean that can be, seen. And already, I don't know why that's such a big, thing that they took out of the game, because obviously they already had a lot of inspiration from H.P. Lovecraft, because one of the first maps where you're playing as, it's one of the ones that had, what's his name? Who's the main character of The Fly? He was also in Jurassic Park. Jeff Goldblum. Yeah. Jeff Goldblum played one of the characters in this map. I think he played the Magician or some shit. It's based in the 1930s and stuff like that. And then pretty much the entire all the special enemies and all the extra Easter eggs and stuff that you do is very heavily based on H.P. Lovecraft. If you played that map and you know what I'm talking about, then great. That whole storyline in Black Ops 3 is based off of that. Awesome. Please look it up though if you haven't, because the models and stuff in that DLC, or not DLC, but in that game mode are fucking amazing. And I'm so fucking mad that I didn't get to play it more. I'm eventually going to though. One that surprised me but didn't really at the same time was Borderlands 3. It was a pretty recent DLC called Love, Guns, and Tentacles. It's the DLC is based off of the fact that 2 of the characters are getting married. It's fucking Wainwright Jacobs and Sir Hammerlock from the video game. If you don't know what I'm talking about, like I said, keep with me, shut up. These characters are getting married, and they want to go to a special planet because both of them are hunters, and they like, big beasties, and they like going on hunts and shit like that. So they go literally to a town that is covered by giant fucking tentacles that are covering the town for shade. And, basically you're planning the wedding and stuff in the game, and then halfway through it, Wainwright Jacobs ends up going insane because you go on a hunt or not a hunt, you go on some mission to find something for his husband, and then halfway through he ends up getting possessed and going insane, and you have to figure it out. And at the end of it, you basically just fight a big giant tentacle monster. And it's kind of one of those cool things that I didn't really expect Borderlands 3 to do, but at the same time, it's easy fucking, it's easy real estate to just, bring in H.P. Lovecraftian kind of lore. And I don't know, it was a good DLC. Borderlands 3 is kind of disappointing altogether though, but either way, it's a good game. Oh shit. that's not even the fucking end of it. But for today, that's all we have for Tipplers Take Two.
And cut.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.
H.P Lovecraft, Cthulhu, and just a handful of other Eldritch Gods within the Cthulhu Mythos. Hopefully you've enjoyed our conversation and discussion about today's topics, and if you did, we urge you to subscribe or follow us so you can catch new episodes every other Monday on all your favorite platforms. Please be sure to leave a review if possible. Those reviews go a long way in helping us grow the show by catching the eyes and ears of new listeners as well as potential sponsors, who can help fund the show.
Yeah, and if you would like to interact with us further, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook pages as well. Instagram at Tipplers2cents and Facebook.com / Tipplers2cents, or email us at Tipplers2centspodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the funding of the show yourself, we have some t-shirts available for you at our merch store at represent.com/store/Tipplers2cents. And the Save Our Children shirt is still and will forever be out, the proceeds of which will go to the Child Rescue Coalition. All other t-shirt purchases help us to keep the show going and growing, and also gives you something to show for your support. So if you guys do purchase these shirts, we thank you very much.
Next week, we'll be talking about the CIA and MK Ultra, so be sure to tune in. We know a lot of you are requesting that one, so we hope you guys will, tune in for that one. For now, we will see you within the lost city of R'lyeh, calling forth into the slumbering one, for he shall inherit the earth and bless us with his forbidden knowledge, and mayhaps grant us passage to live amongst him and his star spawn. Or maybe we'll just see you next time on Tipplers 2 Cents.
Please remember to drink responsibly and think responsibly. Bye!